good afternoon. And I know that I'm the one who's between you and stretching your legs and drinking your coffee, and I'm not going to apologize for that. Other people in this room ought to apologize for putting me in that slot. But I hope we can make this an interesting and engaging conversation. Before I go into my prepared pitch, as it were, I'd like to just build on some of the things we've heard today. Vincent was just talking about analog to digital transformations. That's something I'm passionate about since I started dealing with analog to digital when I was in Cytex from 1994. And there's no doubt that it's one of the really important things that we are facing because it brings new opportunities, new value propositions, new sustainability opportunities across all kinds of different spaces. Alon mentioned Simon several times this morning. I'm the Simon he was talking about. I wasn't expecting to get that kind of promo. But the things that we did in the 14 years that I was privileged to work with and for Alon were pretty amazing. And we're talking about some really exciting things here at this event. I chose not to speak about Highcon, its products and portfolio, because I decided that that would be just a little bit conventional. And I wanted to do something a little bit different. We've heard lots of things about sustainability, and I'm not going to deliver a learned sustainability presentation. I'm going to talk about something that I believe is really important for us as individuals and how Highcon plays to that, but really it's about a way to think. And I've called this, as you can see, 1 penny at a time. Sustainability 1 penny at a time. And, you know, we have a problem. I now have 2 grandchildren, and I worry about the world that their children, and their grandchildren are going to live in. And the truth is, and we saw it, for example, on that terrifying chart of the rising global temperatures that we saw this morning, it's frightening. And what we all really want is to find a solution. You know, just like Steve Jobs brought us an iPhone, somebody should bring us the answer to global warming. But there is no answer, no single answer to global warming. It's a complex answer. This is the wicked problem. Alon spoke about it. It was spoken about again later. These are wicked problems. We also talked about incrementalism this morning. And what I want to suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, is that in this world, when you're dealing with wicked problems, the solutions are actually a portfolio of solutions. And there may be some great innovative ideas that are going to come, but in the meantime, we all have responsibility to do that incrementalism. And that's what I call 1 penny at a time. If I go back to my roots, you can hear from my accent, I grew up in the UK, there's a saying, you count the pennies and the pounds will count themselves. So the big things, the scope 1, the scope 2, the great science-based targets and so on, science-based initiatives, all these things are really, really important. And some of they're the pounds. But there's a whole load of pennies out there. And we start as individuals. Forget our businesses for a moment. We can make responsible or irresponsible decisions. And the only way we're going to save this planet is that if each and every one of us, at every opportunity, places as many responsible decisions, each time you make a good decision, you're putting another penny in that bank. And only if we all start saving relentlessly, responsibly, repeatedly, are we going to combine with Scope 1 and Scope 2 and science-based initiatives and all the other stuff in order to save the planet. And I want to talk about something in that context, which is what Highcon does here, and some of that really is pennies or fractions of pennies, but is back to making right decisions. But before I do that, this was a slide that D.S. Smith showed at FEFCO in Amsterdam last month. And what does it say? It says very simply, 50% of the carbon footprint of the packaging sector is in the material itself. Yes, trees come from managed forests, right? Cutting down trees isn't a bad thing because for every tree we cut down to make paper or board, they plant more trees. And 2 sides will tell you that between 2004 and 2016 or something, In Europe, the area of forests grew by an amount that is equivalent to the entire area of Switzerland. So there are all kinds of good things happening, but it's not enough just to say we're planting trees so we're okay, Jack, because turning trees into paper or board is a major part of what's happening. So every little decision, every little step needs to be considered. So when we think about Highcon, and I didn't say it, I ought to say it. If you don't know, I need to tell those who don't know, those of you who do know, shut your ears for one sentence so you don't hear repetition. Highcon makes digital die cutting equipment. So you take a folding carton or a corrugated board, and using a combination of what we call digitally driven mechanical creasing as well as laser cutting, we turn that into the same kind of thing that comes out of a master cut, for example, from Bob's, only it's a digital or a digitally driven process. When we think of what we have to bring to this world, we talk about 3 core environmental benefits: no dyes, lightweighting, and monomaterial. And I'm going to talk briefly about each of them, but on the middle one, I have news, a press release that went out today about something, and I'll talk about that. So first of all, no dyes. Dyes are great. They are a very well-proven, long-standing way of making a large number of high-quality, identical boxes quickly and well. And if you're doing, and this is the example I always use, Kellogg's cornflakes, that's great because you're spreading the cost of the die, whether it's the financial cost or the environmental cost of that die, over a large number of boxes. But if, for example, you're making a very short-run box, you're making once, the cost of the die, the lead time of the die, and the carbon footprint of the die all add to the cost of the box. And I want us to think back to those pennies about whether, if you choose to make a conventional die or what I'm going to call a digital die, you can reduce the total process carbon footprint of that box. It's no good for Kellogg's cornflakes, but it might be for some other things. So, a set of dies, our Dart, which is the creasing system for this digitally driven mechanical rule that we've written using a 3D printing technology. There's a whole calculation that in the 15 minutes I certainly don't have time to go through. But in round numbers, we approximately use 1/8 of the carbon to do a Highcon virtual die with the creasing foil and the laser as compared to a conventional die. Again, that's really important if you're doing a one-time run of 500, 1,000, 1,500 sheets. It's irrelevant if you're going to run 50,000 sheets. In fact, if you're going to run 50,000 sheets, don't do it on a Highcon. It doesn't make any sense. Just like in digital printing, there's a sweet spot, and there's still a sweet spot for conventional printing. And I spent many years in digital printing saying we're not trying to replace analog, we're trying to complement analog, and they're going to coexist for as long as I can see into the future. The balance between them will change slowly over time. I believe the same is true in finishing processes as well. But this is an important difference. And if you think about what happens to a die, yes, now we hear some converters are talking about by 2030, zero landfill. So they're going to have to start dismantling dies because dies have got complex multiple materials. You can't just recycle them that easily. If we just compare right now and take a Highcon foil, it's 1/49th of the volume in the landfill of a set of dies. So, and we're going to get to recycling that. But in the meantime, there's a difference. That difference is number one in terms of the saving. Number two is the non-crush. Now, non-crush is something, or I'll put it differently, the crushing that happens to a corrugated flute when it goes through conventional processes is just something that is taken for granted because that's how it is. But we all know that one of the challenges we face is to move from it is how it is to it might be different. And if you look at the digital printing equipment that Evandro was talking about, it's non-crush. But the biggest crush process that happens is typically in the die cutting. And we have a paper, there is a paper, When I submitted to Future Print, it was about to be published. It was actually published in the, on this website, on a scientific journal, a peer-reviewed scientific journal, over the weekend. And it's by researchers at the Poznan University of Life Sciences and the Poznan University of Technology. And in simple terms, the top graph here shows the damage to the corrugated board from conventional creasing versus the damage to the corrugated board from the Highcon creasing. The higher the chart, the greater the damage. This was done on stuff that was acquired from a German converter who has a Highcon machine and has a flatbed die cutter. And the researchers sourced different boards from them and different boxes, and they measured. And you can see very simply, there's much less damage. Less damage is good, but what does it mean? It means, in very simple terms, that actually, when you look at less damage, the board is stronger, and therefore the box is stronger in the kind of the gold standard test, which is the box crush test. The box, which was made on the Highcon, which has less damage to the board, is stronger. It crushes it, it fails. It needs more load in order to fail. And that's important. So they specifically refer to the higher load-bearing capacity to boxes with such crease lines. And to sum up, they say modern methods of packaging finishing, because this isn't a commercial piece. This is a piece written by academics in universities in a peer-reviewed journal, talk about how the modern methods of packaging finishing can not only help to digitize production, but reduce the weight of their products and thus save more trees that are our common good. And again, saving trees isn't because we're worried about forests, but because if you use less trees, you've got less carbon, you've got less production, you've got less weight, less transportation, and so on. And the third one is monomaterial. And monomaterial, not in the sense that Francois was talking about from Bob's, which is talking about the really smart materials that they're getting to, which are really important, because pouches matter, but actually the inserts, all the different inserts. Because if you go and buy a box of chocolates, and there's a cardboard box and there's a plastic insert, and then the consumer throws it into the recycling, what happens? It can't be recycled like that. It has to be separated further. When it's monomaterial, it all works better. And here, this was from FEFCO, but I don't have time to talk about it. Let's just say that, put it together. We say there are the three core benefits: no dyes, light weighting through the non-crush, and monomaterial for the inserts. Add that to the fact that paperboard is sustainable and recyclable. And add to that, around it, we talk a lot at Highcon about the economic paradigm shift that we bring, and why would you choose to finish on a Highcon rather than conventionally? And we typically talk about the financial impact. But the truth is, each one of those financial impacts also has an environmental dividend. And you put that all together, and I turn around to you and I say, all the carbon is in the material, and it's in the life cycle. It's in what happens at the end of life of the package. And the converting process is a small fraction of the total. But if we believe that it's our day-to-day responsible decision-making that's going to put more and more money, coins, pennies, in that piggy bank, then there are many occasions when choosing to convert digitally is putting another penny in the savings bank. And ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to save the world alone. We need a lot more efforts. But if everybody says it's not my problem because I can't solve it, and goes on doing what they've always done, then that temperature chart is going to rise, and my grandchildren's grandchildren are going to bake. And that's not an exciting prospect. Thank you very much.